What happens when you give a media personality and a sex therapist a podcast? You get Spill the Tea, a bold, unfiltered space where no topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the messy, hilarious, and heartbreaking realities of life. Will Nash and Maria Orrego serve up real talk with expert insight, hot takes, and a whole lot of tea.
But again, it's like, if we write an article about truth and honesty and not secrets, well, then I would love truth and honesty and transparency.
Yeah, I know, right?
Right. So maybe it'll still come. Maybe it'll come up for like another article, or maybe they'll email us back with more feedback. But for now, that person did not like the idea of being honest and not keeping secrets. Yeah. But anyways, well, let's start off our Spill the Tea. We're going down the rabbit hole of secrets, lies, and honesty and not honesty and all that jazz. Do you feel like you've kept a secret and you haven't spilled the tea for us in your adult life that you haven't shared?
So I have to tell you something. Ever since I, started the whole spill the tea thing, when I was doing this on the radio, now we're doing this in the podcast, there's been a couple of instances with people in my life who have almost kind of used that sort of spilled the tea thing. I mean, I hate to say it like this, but almost against me, where they will not necessarily want to tell me something, or if they tell me something, like what they consider a secret, that they're like, don't go spill the tea about this or whatever it is. And it's funny because I'm actually usually insulted by this, because away from the podcast, away from, when I was doing a radio show, I'm actually one of those people that I value my close friends like family. Like I truly, truly do. And so to me, that's such a huge insult that you don't trust me.
Oh, that's so sad, because they're probably just trying to say it as like off the cuff and humorous, but at the same time, yeah, that would be really like hurtful for someone to think that you're going to spill their secret on the radio.
Sometimes off the cuff and humorous, and that I'm okay with, but there's been a couple times where people I know who have been like, oh, I'm not going to tell you anything because you're going to tell everybody. But that's also, I also understand that branding myself in this way, you are going to get that from people at times. My real friends, they know the real me, right? That being said, I have kept secrets. I have had friends tell me that they were expecting before they were telling other people. I have, when I came out, my cousin who was younger than me, and, had a feeling that he could have been family as well. But, he almost immediately came out to me after I came out. And I was, obviously I held on to that until he was ready to share that with the rest of the family. So, yeah, I can see.
But on the radio, you were told like these secrets to share, right? Like people said, here's my secret, please share it. I would love feedback. It's very different when a friend comes to you with a secret or something that they're holding really near and dear. Of course, you're not going to share it, right?
I know. And I don't know if that's because, and again, I also, as much as there's been some situations that's happened in where it has been upsetting, or maybe even, things have happened or people have assumed that I said something when I didn't say something. You kind of, it's like, I can't sit here and really complain about that because I'm the one who's saying spill the tea, the podcast, or when it was a radio show. And, I'm kind of having these sort of takes or offering advice, not professional advice, but offering personal advice. And so I have to know that that's going to happen. It only once or twice, it's hurt me in the sense where, okay, like if you're asking me that, like this, we're not on air, we're not on a podcast. Like if you truly know me, you will know that you can tell me something and I'm going to keep it guarded.
Which I love too, because that's a real friendship, right? That's like the value of keeping that secret close and near to your heart, and then allowing that person to tell the truth or tell that secret when they feel comfortable to do so, right? It's funny because I often call myself a secret holder, because I have all of my clients, my patients that come to me with all this information. And I actually love it. I love the role that I play of being able to keep all of these secrets very well locked up and evolved, which I think in turn, it's funny because your career has made it so that people don't trust that you're going to like not spill the tea. Whereas most people come to me and they're like, oh, she is never going to spill the tea. She is not going to talk about anything unless we're given permission. Like on this podcast, when people come with our questions and they DM us with fun, interesting stories, that is all with permission. So there's no confidentiality there. But I love being a secret holder.
I could imagine that you would. Like, you must have a vault just locked so that no one is getting through, with lots of juicy stories or lots of things that people are going through. And I'm sure a lot of other people who aren't even sharing those with you are also going through the same things. Now, the other thing is too, though, is that with me, I mean, you know, obviously we have our podcast now, which is amazing. But when I was doing the segment on the radio, which is slightly different than what we're doing now, but also there's some similarities. It was almost like, not so much in the sense where you're obviously a therapist and people are paying to go and see you and get that professional advice. You have the education and the experience to back it. It's like, I feel like the conversations that I was having with listeners or with people, I mean, on the internet, essentially, is, you know, like everyone wants to, I used to always say, no one wants to take the advice that they should do in their own personal lives when they know that they should, but everybody wants to tell everyone else what they should be doing.
Which is, I think, what made this segment so amazing, because that's gold. It's true. Everybody wants to give advice. They don't want to take the advice, but they want to hear the spill the tea question, dish out all the advice, and say, yeah, you should do it this way, 100%. But then most of us would not even take our own advice on that.
Ourselves included at times, right?
For sure. Yeah.
All the time.
Even as a therapist, right? You struggle with taking your own advice. We're human. We're all flawed. And we all want the easy, comfortable route, right? Which I think leads us into the topic of today of, do you keep secrets? Do you withhold information in your relationships? Or do you disclose and become transparent, even though you might have the risk of hurting somebody?
And it's interesting too, because when you think about when you first start dating someone, like, I mean, the very, very beginning, I think that in a lot of cases, it kind of sets the stage for how that relationship could go. From like the first time you meet, your first few months of dating, in terms of, okay, how much are you sharing about your past partners, your past sexual experiences, your struggles in other relationships that maybe in certain situations you were the one to blame for that relationship ending, or maybe it was your partner. And I think that if you're stepping into a relationship, you really have to think about it. And I'm not a therapist. I just play one on a podcast. You're an actual therapist, but it's almost like you have to think about it going into a relationship and deciding, okay, and if you're hiding something, why are you hiding it? Right? I mean, I feel like you're allowed to hold some things to yourself that I feel like you don't necessarily have to tell anyone. I do believe that. I really do believe that there are things that are personal to you for whatever reason. Maybe you decide to never share them. But I think that when it comes to sharing your life with someone, you really both, like everything else, have to be on the same page. If you are not going to be opening up about how many people you've slept with, how many relationships that you've had, you cannot get mad at your partner if they're doing the exact same thing that you are. You just can't. It's a double standard.
Oh, there's huge double standards when it comes to honesty and secrets, especially with like relationships, past relationships, how many people you've had sex with, how many people you've dated, whether or not you've dated X, Y, and Z. There's so many of those secrets that are like double standard-ish, which makes it more difficult. I would say, though, it's a values game, right? What do you value? What do you want to discuss? What do you not want to discuss? What is important for your relationship to move forward well, right? We've seen so many times these ideas of, I need to know how many people you've slept with, how many people you've dated, whether or not you've tried X, Y, and Z in the bedroom with someone.
Yeah.
It matters if it's of value to you and if it actually produces any change in your relationship, right?
You know what? Yeah. You know what I wonder too is like the whole conversation about how many people you've either been in a relationship with or had sex with. I wonder, and I guess it's hard because it would be a bit of a generalization, but I wonder really, truthfully, by sharing that information with one another, how much does it actually play beyond just being honest? How much does it play into the success of a relationship? Now I know that you have had 16 partners. Like, does it, I don't know. I don't even expect an answer from you, but does it actually factor into how successful the relationship is going to be if you know those magic numbers? Or is it just like, oh, okay, we're around the same, or, oh, he slept more with more people than I have, or, like, I just kind of wonder mentally what it does. That's all.
No, I'm going to answer the question because I think it's a great question. I love this. I think the idea of how many people you have had sex with before you're in that relationship and having this discussion should have no bearing whatsoever in the relationship moving forward, unless it means something about the lifestyle or the type of sex that you're interested in, right? So if one person's coming from like a kink background, while the other person is coming from maybe more of a purity like culture and has only actually had sex with one person, then yes, there needs to be a conversation so that everyone's on the same page. There's consent, there's conversation, dialogue, and we can evolve together. But if we're both kind of equally in the same type of lifestyle, the same type of sexual experiences, you knowing whether or not I've had sex with 1 or 16 people shouldn't make a huge difference, except for maybe experience, right? So some people that maybe have a lower, what they call body count.
Yes, kill count.
Might have less experience, right? And so they just feel a little bit more insecure, or they feel like, hey, I haven't experienced a lot of things. I haven't tried this. I feel a little bit insecure about my body when it comes to X, Y, and Z. So yeah, that can have like bearing in the conversation. But if we're just exchanging numbers for the sake of exchanging numbers, it's only going to create insecurities, jealousy, way more questions, and a whole lot of doubt that you do not need on your first date meeting this person.
Yeah. It makes sense. I mean, it's good. Depending on what the number situation is, it could play into those insecurities. If you don't have you're not matching up side by side in terms of the numbers, or like you said, if both people are into different things in the bedroom, but then again, maybe devil's advocate, it's a good thing to share those things, because then you're soon, okay, maybe this person isn't for me. Like, this is more the lifestyle that I, will find myself in. But I mean, I guess what it really boils down to is not even that conversation, but just about being honest, keeping secrets, telling lies. Because I think that's one, I don't know, is it as bad to hold a secret as it is to tell a lie?
I think so. I think it does the same damage from a psychological level. I think it does the same damage because if you think about it, a secret or a lie, at the end of the day, they're under the umbrella of betrayal. Either way, right?
Yeah.
So in our psyche, they're going to create the exact same like pain point, which sucks, right? Okay, but I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Are there questions that you do feel are important to ask, like when you first start dating someone, in order to kind of sniff out those secrets? Are there questions that you think are like, these are like deal breakers, and therefore I have to ask them because I know the person might not be forthcoming with this information?
Well, that's a great question. And I think that I don't necessarily need to know a number per se in terms of how many sexual partners that you have had. I mean, take care of yourself, get tested, and do all of those things that you need to do. I mean, I think for everyone, but especially for a gay man. And also, but I would be interested in your relationship history.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Relationship history, like how many people have you like dated, or if you've lived with someone, or Like, do you want to know like reasons for breakup?
Maybe I might want to, but and I'll say this, I'll be very honest with you. Like for me, I have been single for a while, and I know that to some people, that could be a red flag. Why are you single? Why aren't you in a relationship? When was your last relationship? All of those sort of questions that come, right? Um, so I would have to be expected to answer some of those questions as well, because I also don't, and I'm a little bit biased, but I don't necessarily think that by being single, it doesn't make me less compatible in a relationship than someone who has consistently been in a relationship and jumping from one bed to another, because I've known people who have ended a relationship and then that night they are on Tinder or they are on an app, a dating app or whatnot. So it's like, I think that there's a lot of different factors as to why that could happen, but I wouldn't necessarily need to know, oh, okay, so what did you do with your last boyfriend in the bedroom? And, hopefully I can keep up with that. I feel like I would be honest with them if they wanted to know something, as long as I felt like it wasn't too invasive.
Yeah, for sure. I love that you mentioned the idea of being single for a long time. I actually think that's a huge like flex, to use the Gen Z like term. I think it's a great thing because it means that you've actually spent time getting to know yourself. Whereas people that do kind of serial date, they don't have
Yeah.
time to get to know like themselves, right? So then they go into these relationships probably with a lot of damage, instead of being like, I can present who I am. I know myself. I'm self-aware. I've reflected. I've been comfortable in my own skin to be alone and to
Yeah.
experience what that feels like. And now I'm ready to bring in a partner and experience that.
I think and that's a big part of it. And I appreciate you saying that in a very kind, sweet way. It's interesting because there's that take, and then I've had other, and maybe, hey, you know what? If you are also single right now, and I'm not trying to get your number, but I'm just saying, I feel like you are, if you're hearing this, if you're watching this in the Spill the Tea pod today, you probably had other people be like, so like, because I've had it. So like, you don't want a boyfriend, or why are you single? And then you get the compliments that are flooded, right? Whether it's something about your looks, or you've got a career, or like whatever it is, right? Like, so it's like people tend to be like, and these are usually people sometimes in the family, and other times where it's like at those get-togethers when people are just kind of just so mesmerized by the fact that somebody could be single. And I always say it like this: it's like, yeah, I definitely, and like anyone else, I have had my share of heartbreak or disappointment or rejection and all these things that make it hard. And when those things happen, yeah, I'll be honest, like I have taken a step back because that's how I am. Those things will happen.
I love that you're saying this idea of like people putting pressure on you, but it's funny how people in relationships put pressure on single people to be in relationships. Well, most people in relationships don't want to be in their relationship. And yet they put pressure on these single people. It's like, no, you're just envious that they have their quote unquote independence, whatever that looks like. Just be happy that they're living their life and you be happy that you're living your life. And the grass is greener is always what I always like think is hilarious when it comes to relationship people and then single people, how we like cross-pollinate the judgment. And it's not worth it. You're welcome to be single and people are welcome to be in relationships. And yes, if you want to slide into Will's DMs, you are welcome to while you're listening.
DMs are always open. They never sleep, right? Just like the tea never stops spilling. It's just the way that it goes. No, but it is true. And I didn't even plan to bring this up in this episode of Secrets and Lies. That wasn't the intention. I just think that it's an interesting thing because, I mean, I would be the one as a single person who would be out talking to people, whether you're on a dating app or whatnot. And I'll be honest with you, I hadn't been on a dating app. Like, I don't mean a hookup app. I mean a dating app for a while. And around the holidays, and maybe it was just that feeling, right? Because around the holidays, you see, it's always a harder time of year, I find, if I'm being transparent with you, because you do see a lot of couples get together, or you're trying to get together with some of your friends during the holidays, and they're busy with their partner, they're busy with their partner's family and whatnot. So, and it's on there. I mean, I was on there a couple of nights ago, But it's just like, I mean, I haven't invested a large amount. Look, this time being on it, I haven't invested a large amount of time on it. Like, it's one of those things that if I'm just sitting around, you open up all the, like, you go Instagram, TikTok, Tinder.
Tinder, the last one. Would you ask someone if they've been unfaithful? Because we see that all the time, right? This idea of, I know we've talked about it off air like many times, of this idea of like cheater, always a cheater. And we can talk about that on a different episode because I've got my thoughts on that. But do you think that that is a quote unquote good secret to keep from your partner as you go in? Like, maybe you were unfaithful in your previous relationship. Are there, I guess the real question is, are there any like good secrets that you should keep from your partner in order to not hurt them?
So I don't know if I'm being naive here. I don't know that I would ask someone directly if they cheated in their relationship.
Okay.
Is that, I don't know if that's being naive or being a bit of innocence to that. I would ask about the relationship history, but I don't necessarily, unless I got a vibe where it was like, okay, like, if they were answering that question, if he was answering that question, he was saying, well, it just ended because of such and such, and he completely diverted the answer, right? Then
Right.
I might ask, say, okay, is that because you stepped into the relationship? Is that because, something like that happened? But I haven't been in a relationship where I have been cheated on up until this point. But maybe if I had been, maybe that's when I would ask that question. Because I think that sometimes those questions can stem from your own insecurities.
I love that. I love that you answer that way. You're right. It does. I think you're right. There's so many questions that come out of a place of you're feeling insecure about something. So you're asking this question because you don't want it to happen to you, right? I will say, though, as a therapist, that is a question I do ask, but not so much about whether or not they cheated. But I like to find out if there's a reason for the cheating, the infidelity, because I think that cheating is such a personal thing. It's actually not about your partner. It's so much more about what you're experiencing. So I think it's more like, as a therapist in the dating world, I would ask that question, but I think it would probably have my therapist hat on and not so much like we're on a nice date and I'm asking you all these questions.
Okay, so you're saying, just so I fully understand, is what you're saying is you, with your career as a therapist, if you were dating and if you were going out with someone, that would be one of the questions that you would ask? Or are you saying if you're in a session that would, and there's say an issue with someone talking about a relationship or a problem at home, that's when you would ask that?
Oh my gosh, both. I think I would answer that with both. If I were dating, if I were in the dating world, I would want to know if somebody has like cheated on their partner, but not so much the reasons of like what led to the infidelity, but more so like what their personal stance is and what they learned from it and what they learned about themselves through that process. That's what I would want to know. And I think that's where like my personal and my professional hat would be kind of like taking turns asking the question, because it's a curious thing, right? When people are unfaithful, it's a very curious thing of what's going on inside of them during that time. So I would ask the question for sure. I would never ask body count, though. That's not a question I think anybody needs to know.
No, I don't think you need to know the answer because, what if you don't want to share your answers? It's like, why do you want to hear theirs, right? Whether it's higher, whether it's lower, whether you're on the same.
Yeah.
The other thing is, too, is that it's interesting because it's like one of these situations where unless and tell me, please, tell me if there's something I should be doing to be more successful at dating or more successful at LTRs, do you think that someone could be asked that question on a date and then get really defensive because they had been a cheater in one, maybe two relationships, and then there you go, that's it, that's the end of the relationship? I guess maybe that's one of my concerns, like why I wouldn't, if I was going out to a date with a guy and I was like, okay, if he didn't say anything that made me think he had been unfaithful in his relationship, maybe I would, and if I really liked him, maybe I would worry that if I ask him this direct question on the first time that he sees me, this could be the first and last date that we're together. But then again, maybe that's just me having those insecurities about worrying that it's not going to go past that second date. I'm kind of just rambling about this. So what should I do, Maria? This is just like, this really is what happens when we do this podcast.
But I'm going to stop you for a second. If you're scared to ask a question because you think the person's going to get mad or insecure or defensive, that's going to show you something, though. You don't want to be with someone like that. If you can't ask an honest question in order to gain information and to like try to grow a relationship, they get angry or defensive, you should be the one walking out of that restaurant. Don't date someone that's going to get like that, because then you're just going to be walking on eggshells the entire relationship because you're scared to ask a question in case they blow up at you.
No, I guess scared wasn't really the right word to use, although I know where you're going with that. Is I wonder if someone, and I'm sure they're in the history of dating, I'm sure there's been many people who have been on a date and very offended for a number of different reasons. Do you think that a lot of people, and I'm thinking mostly would be people who were unfaithful in their previous relationships, do you think that would piss off a lot of people? And they would be like, why does this guy have the audacity to ask this? Or do you just think, you believe as a therapist, it's a fair game question? If you can't handle it, well, you shouldn't be going on a date.
I think it's a fair question. I think if it's done with like gentleness and compassion, not just like accusatory, right? You don't want to be mean to the person. I think if you're asking with like a genuine concern, then no, I think it's a fair question to ask. I would say though, probably ask it like relatively at the beginning of your relationship, because if you're like months into a relationship and all of a sudden you ask this question and you get the answer that you're not looking for, then you're going to be heartbroken with that, right? And I think that's why, again, is this a secret that someone's holding, or are they being transparent and sharing these things with you, right? Are they sharing that maybe they've been divorced or they had a polyamorous relationship before and now they're choosing monogamy, or vice versa? Are they being transparent and honest about these things? That's going to give you a lot of insight into what their character is. I believe in honesty and transparency as a therapist, because the longer it takes you to tell the truth, the more damage you're doing in your relationship, which then means we're having to repair all those moments instead of the one moment where you actually chose to tell the truth and be vulnerable.
Brilliantly put, truly. Like that makes it make sense when you put it that way. And I think, should we go to our question?
Yeah, let's do it. We've got a spill the tea question, which comes in response to the Hamilton Spectator article about honesty and secrets, I think it was called, or something like that. I can't even remember what the article was called, but yes, let's go to the spill the tea question. Go for it.
Yeah, so this, we'll keep it anonymous to respect everybody's privacy out there. It says, Maria, I read your Dear Maria column about keeping secrets from your partner. A few months into my relationship, I had a one-time hookup with someone else. At the time, my partner and I weren't super serious, but now we've been together for years, and I feel guilty. I love them and have never strayed since, but I don't know if confessing would help or just cause unnecessary pain. Should I tell them, or is this a secret better left in the past? Oh, this is like, like as I'm reading this, I was just, what we had talked about this obviously before we started to record the pod today, but
it's
that
painful.
is tough.
Yeah, this one's a painful question because unfortunately there's so many like trigger points and like it's a minefield, right? The first thing that shoots out at me is my partner and I weren't super serious. I would want to know what that means. Like, were you guys just casually dating? Was it an open relationship in the sense of like, we're still not exclusive, we're dating other people? Maybe your partner also had other relationships during that time. I think before sharing anything, in order to not cause a lot of pain, I would want to know from my partner's perspective what their perspective of our relationship was during that time. What does it mean that they weren't super serious? If your partner thinks that you guys were exclusive, we've got another minefield to go through.
Well, and the other thing is I've known personal friends who have been in a relationship taken some time apart or broken up. I know they didn't say that they were broken up necessarily. They just said that they were super serious at that point in time. And one person strayed and the other person didn't. And then they came back together and that caused problems.
That's the Ross and Rachel.
Yeah, exactly, right?
It's the Ross and Rachel. I feel like that debate has been going on since the 90s of, were you on a break? Were you broken up? Can you sleep with other people when you're on a break or broken up? Again, this is where the idea of like, what does it mean super serious, right? People start dating and someone thinks it's exclusive. The other person doesn't. Someone's getting hurt.
Well, and I'm trying to see here, just looking back at this for a second. So they just said a few months into the relationship, it was a one-time hookup. I don't think it says how long they've been, because it sounds like they're still currently together.
It does. It says they've been together for years now. And that,
yeah, but again, is it 5 years? Is it 10 years? We don't know.
It's hard. This one's a hard one, right? Because you have to think like, what kind of harm will this cause in the relationship? Is it worth kind of going through that pain? I will say when you go through any type of infidelity, it's not always the end of a relationship. It can be a new beginning. However, the middle part of that new, like getting to that new beginning can be incredibly difficult. So it's a hard one. It's a very difficult place to be, unless if your partner is asking you, if your partner has like questions and you're not answering them, I would highly suggest you start answering them honestly.
The interesting thing with this scenario here too, with this question, is I don't know that this person who wrote to you will necessarily, as long as they hold this secret, be able to function in a healthy manner in this relationship. Because it doesn't matter if they've been together for 2 years, 5 years, 10 or 15 years. If this is weighing on them, and again, I don't know if it's a male or a female, it really doesn't matter what sex they are, and they keep holding it in and holding it in and holding it in, I don't even know if just spilling it to a best friend or a close family member is going to do that. Like, I feel like that I think if it was me, and I felt this way and I felt this guilt, I think I would eventually just burst.
You know what? I will say, ladies and gentlemen, Will, the therapist on a podcast, that was amazing. I think you're right. It weighs on you. The guilt starts weighing on you. And then all of a sudden, unfortunately, it plays into your relationship. You're constantly thinking about it. You know you're carrying this burden and this secret. Yeah, it becomes the elephant in the room. And while I stand with what I said before, honesty is always better, that vulnerability, that transparency. Because the longer you hold it, the more your partner will think, well, what else are you lying to me about? What else are you keeping from me? What else are we not creating a strong foundation on? And then there's so many more points that you have to heal instead of the one when it happened. Realistically, unfortunately, and you can't go back in time, it should have been disclosed when it happened.
I was going to say that earlier too, but I mean, you took those words out of my mouth. And I think the other thing is, okay, so you were unfaithful when things were not, and I quote, super serious. This is something we should have talked about right after it happened, before they got super serious. And the other thing is, it's hard to say it like this, but you never know how people are going to react. You want to assume that if you're telling your partner who has, you assume, committed themselves to you, that they are not going to be welcoming to this, there's probably if you feel guilty about it, there's probably a damn good reason why.
Exactly. And that's where, again, that comes in with that communication. I love that you actually said that the communication piece is so important. Communicate at the beginning what your expectations are. And then you're not in this mess, right? After years of being together, you're both in love, you're probably planning a life together. And now you have to kind of drop this bomb on your partner. That's unfair to both of you, unfortunately.
Would that be, if you have been in a relationship with someone and early on this had happened and he approached you, say 2 years later into your relationship, would that be a deal breaker? Would that end it?
Wow, that's a great question. I think based off of my career, I would say no. mostly because I have actually absolutely loved walking clients, couples through infidelity. It doesn't have to be the end of your relationship. The betrayal hurts, and it is probably one of the biggest pains you can feel within your body and within yourself. But no, I don't think it would end the relationship because, again, infidelity has a lot of layers and a lot of reasons and a lot of things that you have to uncover and then start healing from. Again, going back to this question though, like kind of as my like final sip for the spill the tea question, if you're feeling guilty, communicate. When you start a relationship, communicate. Do not keep secrets from your partner because it's only going to make the healing process worse. Rip off the Band-Aid, have the conversation, and then start healing.
I almost don't even want to give a last sip after that because you kind of just wrapped it all up beautifully. But I'll just say this, is I think that I am sure that if you're keeping a secret or if you're holding gatekeeping information from someone, even if that is someone who, you're dating or in a relationship with, doing anything that you're not supposed to do, that can come with a high. Like I do understand that, but I think that it's never going to bode well for you or your relationship if you hold that stuff in. And quite honestly, it says a lot about who you are.
It does. And you wouldn't want them doing it to you.
We had talked about this before, and this is not the last sip. This is like the last sip, et cetera, is like, it is, you go into a relationship and you have this list of things that you want in a partner. You have to be able to offer the same thing. So if you are in a relationship and your partner is doing all of these things, like it can't be there are double standards. I get that, but you won't be able to run a successful relationship not run a successful relationship, but be a part of a successful relationship if it's based around a web of secrets and lies.
I agree. And I love that. You're right. You can't expect your partner to do something that you're not willing to do. No. Right? Especially when it comes to honesty and secrets. Don't keep secrets. Don't lie to your partner if you want them to be honest and not keep secrets from you.
And you know what? That's the tea.
That's it for this episode of Spill the Tea. If you loved what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and follow us for more candid conversations. Got a burning question or topic you want us to cover? Slide into our DMs. We're always here to spill the tea. Follow us on socials at the Spill the Tea Pod, at Will Nash on Air, and at Sex Off the Pedestal.